Hello, and welcome to Songs for the Struggling Artist, the blogcast. My name is Emily, and if you've never listened to the blogcast before, I'd be shocked, but that would be awesome. And what I do here is I read the blog. So I have a blog called Songs for the Struggling Artist, and this podcast is the audio version, which includes some of this little chitty-chatty at the beginning, the blog, and a song. So welcome if this is your first time here. So last week I basically did 2 blog casts in a row because I was hoping to make a difference for a candidate for Attorney General here in New York State. That it did not go as I had hoped, sadly. And I don't think my blog or the podcast actually has quite a strong enough reach to have helped with the 100,000 vote gap between the winner and my candidate of choice. So politics, man, it's hard. It's hard, bro. Anyway, you may have missed the blogcast previous to that, because I have noticed, certainly in my own podcast listening, that sometimes if podcasts are sort of sandwiched together like that the first one can get lost a little bit in the feed. So if you heard the one about Zephyr Teachout last week but didn't hear the one before, it was called Art by the Numbers, check it out. Just bring it to your attention because, yeah, I feel like sometimes a lot of podcasts can get lost in the way podcast apps favor the most recent of something. It depends on the app, of course, but most of the ones that I listen to certainly will like wipe out the thing that came before in order to show you the most recent one. So just, heads up if you wanted to listen to that one. It featured a Paul Simon song. So, check that out. And it also had me getting my calluses back because I was out of town for a couple of weeks and I wasn't playing guitar. And boy, oh boy, did it take a little while to get the calluses back in order. My fingers are now starting to peel, so we're getting there. So today's blogcast is the blog itself is kind of a short one. And I'm just going to read it to you. It is called She's a Female, So That's Interesting. National Geographic has a TV series called Genius, and I read an interview with Ron Howard, who produced it. He was asked why their next subject was going to be Mary Shelley, and he said, "She's a female, so that's interesting." And damned if I didn't have a little hurricane of a reaction to this sentiment. Let me begin by saying that, unfortunately, he's right about the rareness of women who are recognized as geniuses. Genius tends to mean man to most. Genius is rarely attributed to women. So, yes, it is interesting to focus on a woman in a series about genius. I think more accurately, though, it is a nice change of pace rather than interesting. It is not her being female that is interesting. Mary Shelley's femaleness is not actually unique. Over 50% of the population shares that particular trait with her. What is actually interesting is that somehow the world has been convinced that genius is a thing for men, so that it has become unique to see a woman on a show about genius. That's the interesting part. That and the fact that it has taken this long to bring a woman into a story about a genius. Also, the use of female in this context uniformly makes me crazy. I didn't know why people calling women females was so infuriating for so long until I read some articles about it. Like there's one from Jezebel that's fabulous. And now I can tolerate it even less than I could before. So, there's that too. I mean, I do not deny that having a woman on a show about geniuses is much more interesting to me than any previous subjects they explored. But ultimately, the whole structure of the sentence made me real mad at Ron Howard. I got so mad, I found myself saying, "Take a flying leap, Richie Cunningham." Take your interesting female ideas and shove them, Opie. Which is not very nice to Ron Howard, and I'm sorry. Please hire all my friends who make films, Ron Howard. Make all their movies immediately. Pretend I didn't say anything. But let's imagine this sentence reversed. We're reading an interview with Ron Howard about his subject, Picasso. Interviewer: your next genius is Picasso. Why him? Howard: he's a male, so that's interesting. Is it, though? That was a short podcast, huh? Well, the podcast itself isn't over, but the blog is a shorty. I wonder, do you feel like you want to know before I read it to you if it's going to be a long one or a short one? Actually, you can probably tell because of the length of the podcast, can't you? So I probably don't need to announce it. But I just may keep talking and talking and talking and make this one seem like it's super long, even though it's super short. I don't think I will, though. The song I have for you here today, I looked up songs about geniuses, and there's a couple. I mean, it shows up as a lyric in a few. The only one I could really, off the top of my head think of is a Soul Coughing song. It's not really coverable. I know you're a super genius. That's about it. It's delightful. I enjoy Soul Coughing quite a bit. But that's as much as I can really, call forth. So, in the absence of songs about geniuses, or I didn't even look, but female is not really in songs either because it's a weird word. So I was trying to figure out, what song? And there's a song I've been working on, just sort of on and off, just because I had a thought. It's funny. It's a weird instance where I had a passing thought about a blog I was going to write. And then I was like, oh, I have the perfect song for that blog. And then I didn't write the blog. So I'll explain. I had this idea after writing my post about the change. I noticed there was this whole trend of other Gen X women kind of writing about the change, and I was about to go down the Gen X road again. For those of you who've been listening for a while, you know that I went on a Gen X blogomania, a blog festival on Gen Xery. And I thought, oh, well, there's a ninth post on Gen X that it has to do with Gen X women, not suffering in silence and not being willing to be quiet about, our aging experience and et cetera, et cetera. But there's not much more to say about it than that. We're just not gonna do it. And so this song I thought of because there's a lovely line in it that says, "Don't suffer in silence." By the way, the song is "Never Be the Same" by Crowded House. So I was like, once I get that blog written, I will do "Never Be the Same." And also I thought, for this thing about the change, "Never Be the Same" is actually also perfect. But that blog is not going to happen. I mean, it might later down the road. And if it does, I'll just pull the song back out. So be prepared to listen again if that blog happens. But I really don't think there's more to say than what I just said to you now. So I thought, I'll just put that song here. Because I don't have this perfect song for this particular post. And that song is perfect for a post that does not exist, so they can pair together nicely. I do think, though, there is something about singing this song in this particular moment, at least here in America at the moment, with the Supreme Court confirmation hearings and just the news of sexual assault that are, anyway, there's something about singing this song right now that feels right. Yeah, it's a weird time, man. It's a weird time. It's kind of dark and depressing and scary here. I'm sorry. I hope you're not experiencing it that way. Anyway, so here is Never Be the Same. Don't suffer in silence. Let's not suffer in silence. That's the message of Never Be the Same to me. Don't suffer in silence. There's an optimism in Never Be the Same, don't you think? Anyway, so here, Never Be the Same by Crowded House. Don't stand around like friends at a funeral, eyes to the ground. It could have been you. And why do we weep for the passing of ages? You slip the back of your hand, you're taking it out on the ones you love. I couldn't believe it, that we might still survive and rise up through the maze. If you could change your life and never be the same. How long must I wait for you to release me? I pray for each mistake while you suffer in silence. I could still have an easy life, but the lie ain't worth the living. Once more when I hear you say that we might still survive and rise up through the maze. If you could change your life and never be the same. So don't stand around like friends at a funeral, eyes to the ground. Don't suffer in silence, 'cause we might still survive and rise up through the maze. If you could change your life and never be the same. And every time I hear you, and never be the same. And every time I mess up, never be the same. Never be the same.